I just got back from watching the Thunderbolts, and what a shocking ending to this movie. I mean, I never saw what they did coming, and it completely took me by surprise. And you know what? It took the others in the theater with me by surprise as well. They were audibly stunned. You could just hear them go like, "Wait, what? What just happened? What did they just say?" But we're going to get into that in a little bit, so just sit tight. We're also going to talk about the villain in this movie and how he kind of stacks up against the other villains in the MCU. Now, my first impressions of this movie is that the people are either going to love it or they're going to hate it. I say that because this isn't your typical Marvel movie. Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of good action in this movie, which we're going to get to in a second. This movie is really emotional, and I'm not talking about the being a heavy tearjerker kind of emotional, but it focuses heavily on the emotions of each of the characters in this film. It focuses a lot on the mental health of every character in this movie. It delves into the choices that each one of them have made in their lives and how these choices has had an impact on them mentally. This really helps to ground these characters and make them a bit more relatable to each and every one of us. In this movie, we also get to meet Bob, and he kind of struggles with mental health as well. He was searching for anything to kind of give his life some purpose, which led him to a study in which they experimented on him. Now, of course, you know, these experiments were done by some really shady people that shouldn't come as any surprise, and it led to him becoming Sentry. Think Superman, kind of has similar types of power set. But because of Bob's mental health struggles, his darker side gets powers too. And when his darker side comes out, it turns into the Void. Think of it as someone who is bipolar. On the high end, he's Sentry. On the low end, he's the Void. But unlike someone who is bipolar, he has a lot more control over which side comes out, and he can kind of keep that dark side at bay if he chooses. I know the movie is the Thunderbolts, and it's a team-up movie, but this really feels like a Yelena Belova movie. The biggest focus is on her, and even though we deal with all the characters in a kind of a similar way, it's just to a much lesser extent than they do with Yelena. It's because of these aspects that I think it'll be a love or hate kind of movie for most fans. I do think that most fans will love it over hate it, and it'll probably be something like a 70-30 kind of split, but not probably many people in the middle. I thought the plot was really good and handled well. I was worried about how this movie was going to be, knowing that Sentry and the Void were going to be in it, and them being just so overpowered compared to the rest of the characters in this movie. The way that they navigated the story and how they had to deal with such an overpowered villain worked really well and didn't take away from any of the action. This movie and its story is a lot darker and grittier than your typical Marvel movie. There was even one moment that I let out a audible gasp because of the darkness, especially in a Marvel movie. Now, the action was great. There was a phenomenal fight scene at the very beginning of this movie that involved most of the characters, which was choreographed superb. Now, because of the emotional aspects of this movie, it wasn't non-stop action or as much action as you probably thought it would be or hoped it would be, but there was plenty of it there to keep you engaged. We even get to see how overpowered Sentry is. It would be cool to see him go up against some of the other heavy hitters in the MCU and kind of see how that would play out. I bet it'd be exciting. The acting in this movie was great. Florence Pugh was phenomenal as Yelena, and David Harbour as the Red Guardian was probably my absolute favorite character in the entire movie. I just loved him. He had me just rolling in laughter throughout. Lewis Pullman was awesome as well, as he played Bob, Sentry, and Void. The range that he had to play between all of these characters was huge, and he just did a really great job. I will say that Ghost was fairly forgettable. If she wasn't in this movie, it wouldn't have hurt the movie at all. It just kind of was a background character that didn't do a whole lot and didn't really need to be there. There wasn't as much humor as a typical MCU movie, which I kind of understood based on the subject matter in this movie and dealing with a lot of mental health type of stuff. That being said though, some of the humor kind of just fell flat to me, and I thought it could have been done a lot better, and it just didn't live up to the same type of humor that we would expect in a typical MCU movie. Now, I thought the Void was a cool villain. He is super overpowered, and I don't know much about him in the comics and the storylines he had there, but because of how they had to deal with him in this movie, it felt like they kind of really had to hold back, and he could have been so much more of a bigger threat than what we got. Like I mentioned before, it would be cool to see the Void come back again and go up against some of the more powerful heroes and see how they could make him into a much bigger threat than what we got in this movie. There definitely could be some potential there down the road, and I really would just love to see that. I like the movie a lot, and I would probably give it about a 7 out of 10. It wasn't the best Marvel movie, but it was significantly better than what we have been getting recently. It definitely was a step in the right direction, and I hope that this is a good sign of things to come, as in July we get the new Fantastic Four movie, which I cannot wait for. If you want to know about staying after the credits, make sure you do, because there's a mid-credits scene, which is just for a good laugh, and it's pretty funny. And the post-credits scene takes us 14 months into the future, hinting at some interesting dynamics for Marvel moving forward. Now, before we get into that big surprise twist, it is a spoiler. So if you don't want to hear any spoilers for this movie, make sure to pause this video and come back later on once you've seen the movie. Now, I'm going to give you a few more seconds to pause it or leave it before I get into it, just to make sure you get away. Okay, now at the very end of this movie, once the Void has been defeated, we see our heroes and Bob confront Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, and she slips through some tarps as she's trying to get away. And as the heroes follow her and go through the tarps, they find themselves front and center at a press conference where Valentina comes to the mic and takes credit for their heroism and putting them together as a team. And then she dubs them as the New Avengers. This was something I did not see coming, and the other people in my theater, as I said, were just as shocked as I was. We see that this has some heavy implications and some detractions that play out in that post-credit scene at the end of the movie. It will be interesting to see where this plot point goes moving forward. Let me know what you think about this team becoming the New Avengers down in the comments. Now, if you enjoyed this review, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on any of our movie content that comes to you every single day but Sunday. While you're here, why don't you go check out this video right here. I hope each and every one of you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you in the next video.